Hello there, Qckslvrslash here today with a review of the Tier 6 Royal Navy premium battleship, the HMS Warspite. I've featured a video of this ship before on my channel, and as you should all be aware, I absolutely love it. You can look at the amount of experience I've poured into it, and this captain is ready for a Royal Navy line. But today I'm going to go over how I've got mine set up, her strengths and weaknesses compared to the other Tier 6 battleships, and then feature a game that I thought I really put the Warspite into the best situation possible. So right off the start, she has a survivability rating of 65, 53,800 hit points, 25 to 330 millimeters of armor, and a 24% torpedo reduction. And despite her survivability number being just slightly higher than the New Mexico's 64, I honestly feel the Warspite kind of falls to the bottom of the pool. Her Citadel is incredibly well armored, and against cruiser fire, you're going to tank all day, but when you get into a brawl with equal tier battleships, you really have to know how to drive this thing to get the most out of her. And one of the big downsides is, A, the torpedo reduction is the lowest in her tier. The Fuso has a 36% reduction, the New Mexico has a 40% reduction. So if you eat torpedoes, they're going to hurt, but her main disadvantage is this massive superstructure. When you look at the Fuso's is very tall, but there's a lot of empty space, and the same is true of the New Mexico, whereas the Warspite has that very iconic, massive bridge structure, very flat sides, and you can end up eating a lot of damage through it when cruisers decide to target your superstructure and light you on fire. What one of her main strengths is, though, is her 4 double-barreled turrets with 381mm main batteries. These are the biggest of her class. Both the Fuso and the New Mexico have 356mm batteries, and she doesn't really pay for having bigger guns. Her reload is 30 seconds, the Fuso gets a 28-second reload, the New Mexico has a 34.2. Now fair enough, the Fuso has 6 double-barreled turrets, and the New Mexico has 4 triple-barreled turrets, giving both of the other ships more barrels on target, but the raw damage out of these, that 11,400 maximum AP damage, beats the just over 10,000 that the Fuso and New Mexico get. And despite the immense armor on these turrets and them feeling very slow, they're actually on par for tier once you put the right modules on. On mine, the 180 degree turn time is 56.3. My Fuso is 56.3, and the New Mexico in its stock format with no upgrades, except the hulls, like in a fully upgraded form, but no modules or captain, is 62nd. So when you get into that, she is very flexible, and you know, every time I drive her, I'm just like, God, these turrets feel so slow, but when I actually go and look at the numbers, it's pretty much on par for her tier. The shell velocity out of them is a little low at 732 meters per second. The Japanese AP is 775 and the Americans is 832. So you have to aim a little differently with the Warspite than you would the other Tier 6 battleships. But where she really holds the advantage, at least over the Fuso, is her dispersion. 219 meter maximum dispersion, the Fuso is 241. And when you consider that the Fuso is really supposed to be a standoff brawler, that can start to hurt a bit. The New Mexico comes in the best of class with 196. She's got adequate secondaries, having 4 of these double-barreled turrets, 2 per side, and then another 8, 4 per side, of these in-hull 152s, and I've done a lot of work to boost them up. So I've got 7.6 out of the double-barreled 102s and 7.6 out of those hulls. So when destroyers, particularly American ones at this tier, have to close to that 5.5 kilometer range to drop their torps on me, my secondaries have already been lighting them up for a couple kilometers. And that may not seem like a lot, but the number of situations I've been in where a destroyer on sub 1,000 hit points has made a run at me trying to do that, glorious last stand, get the kill. My guns have finished them off, and with these big slow turrets, you really can't afford to engage. In fact, in a number of situations, I've turned the entire hull of the 180 degrees because that's been faster than trying to get these turrets around. Now the Warspite's AA, only a 47, and you have to remember this is with a number of upgrades that I'll be covering in a moment. The Fuso gets a 39, and the New Mexico gets a 44. I don't find any of the tier 6 is to be particularly strong in self-AA cover. It's really the fully upgraded Colorado at tier 7 is the first time I feel that any of the battleships kind of have adequate amount of AA to at least help protect themselves. But where the Warspite also really shines is in her maneuverability. Granted, 23.5 knots, not an incredible top speed. Fuso does 24.5. The New Mexico only does 18.5. So, while she may feel slow, she's a heck of a lot quicker than at least one of her competitors. But where she is astounding is this 550 meter turning circle. The Fuso is a 740 meter, which makes sense with that long hull. And the New Mexico is 640. The 550 is as good as, I would say, some equal tier cruisers. Like, let's pull up the Cleveland. Yeah, the Cleveland's 660. So you've got a battleship that can turn a tighter circle than an equal tier cruiser. And you can really put that to use, especially when you get aircraft dropping torpedoes on you. You full rudder over and you turn on a dime. And the other big advantage with that turning circle, and kind of a disadvantage, is she bleeds so much speed. So when you put the rudder hard over to dodge torps, your turn is killing enough speed that when you combine that with throwing your engines into a stern, it equals some mad WSD hacks. And her rudder shift is fairly adequate, 14.2. It's pretty much on par. Fuso is 14.9. The New Mexico is 13.5. Then when you get into the final thing, concealment, well, battleships aren't really known for concealment, but she's still only detectable at 13.8, 15.1 after firing, compared to the Fuso's detectability of 18.3 and the New Mexico's 14.2. You have a little bit of an edge. If it's you versus one of those battleships at the end of the game, if it's a New Mexico, you're fast enough to close them, and you're going to get the first volley off before they detect you, and the Fuso's not going to be able to sneak up on you. So now moving into how I've got her equipped. This is how I like to play it. I always want to kind of preface my setups like that. Everyone's got a bit of a different loadout. I personally feel main armament 1 because you cannot afford to lose any of these turrets. You've only got 8 barrels. Losing a pair of them can be devastating. Then I've gone with secondary I have lost my ability to speak. Secondary battery modification number 2. And I use this to push out those secondaries and really help them when I get into those brawly situations against cruisers and destroyers and even battleships. I've put this ship into a number of times where you're in those tight, in-close battles with an enemy battleship, and getting those bonus little fires from your secondaries pecking away can help. And then to round out my modules, I have damage control 1 and 2. With the big superstructure and the way this ship behaves, you really need to build her to tank a bit, and I feel that those 2 mods really help me. And you'll see with my commander, it's pretty much the same setup. I have ship survivability 1, 2, and 3 right up the middle, and it just keeps me in. I do feel that Superintendent could be quite useful, and I may end up switching 2 of these skills out for that and trying it out just to get that extra heal, but I do use the premium damage control and repair party consumables, and I feel those keep me in it most games. Then I've also gone with basic fire training and advanced fire training to further increase both my AA and secondary power, and I've rounded out my skills with expert marksman to boost the traverse speed of these guns. 56.3, you know, it's equal to the Fuso, and that's after I've put skills into speeding that up. So overall, that's how I have her set up and how she looks in port. So now we're going to go to some gameplay, and I'll talk through some of her strengths and weaknesses further and hopefully give you a solid picture of just how the Warspite performs. So, this is the game I have to share with you. I was playing alongside regular division mate NV Mountain Dew. We dropped in, ended up on Neighbors. You can see it is a tier 7 game, but I'm big as far as battleships go, being that no tier 7 battleships. One of my big concerns though is that tier 7 carrier, because honestly, as I kind of mentioned, the AA is not strong, and unless I have some support from friendly cruisers like our Atlanta, I could get absolutely picked apart by their torpedoes.
General quarters.
So, I've shared a couple games on Neighbors, and generally, as I've mentioned before, where I like to go is up to C. I prefer the cover that the islands can offer, and too much just races down to A, and I don't want to participate in part of the lemming train. So I'm going to head up towards C, and it's actually a pretty solid place for battleships to go. I know a lot of times battleships want to avoid islands out of some innate fear that a destroyer is lurking around every edge of land. But if you pay attention to your situational awareness and you watch where destroyers are spotted, you have more than enough time to react and get away.
Enemy force detected.
But you can see NV is going down to A. He's sticking with the other battleships. He even said he was a little scared to go up there and without sonar, and honestly, I just pretty much always go for C. It may be a little close-minded of me to just go there regardless of what class I'm in, but it is what I like to drive, and really where I feel I play the best. So off the bat, can see that B is being capped. Easily one of their destroyers is snuck into that cap. Their Mitsuki is going into C, so at least I already know where two of their DDs are. I get spotted, most likely from B. As you can see, my detection circle is fully enclosed in the cap, so unless he's hiding around the edge of land, I'm going to be detected by him. So I'm just going to keep sailing. I don't feel torps are in the water yet, and part of the reason is the other ships are a Mayhan and a Błyskawica, and they both have about 9 kilometers. I think the Błyskawica is 8 kilometer torps, and the Mayhan can get 9.2s if she has long range. You can see my division mate trying to warn me that DDs are at B, and I'm not too concerned. What I am concerned about and very happy to see is look where all the enemy aircraft are. They're going for the rest of my fleet, which means I'm going to be left alone at least for now. So I see that Qckslvrslash. I'm slowly waiting for my barrels to get over. I fire off a volley, and the Błyskawica gets spotted. So now have a pretty solid idea of where every single DD is, and look at that damage. One volley, 15,000 damage on the ship that I love, the Qckslvrslash. I absolutely demolishing that thing. I'm actually going to have another kind of bonus video to put up today of just a great game I had in it for just some fun viewing. You can see my secondaries are firing at the Błyskawica. I quickly add my main batteries in because I do not like letting DDs live. It may seem like a bit of a waste to fire AP at them, but it still works, and an overpen's still about 1,000 damage. So I see those Mitsuki torps in the water, see my speed dropping as I kill it, and I'm going to use this solid piece of land, and I'm actually going to sit here maybe a little longer than I should have, but there's an Atlanta there too that I didn't want to become a barbecue for. So I end up parking my butt here and just kind of waiting and trying to see what's going on the map. See a friendly ship eat some torpedoes. The Atlantas are engaging one another at close range, and they can absolutely wreck each other. I'd almost say the Atlanta's worst enemy is another Atlanta. The rate of fire and just spam of ammunition they can put out is almost designed to kill themselves. So I was backing out hoping to kind of help put fire. I get spotted that Kirishima is coming up on my stern, so I kick it back into forward with the goal of closing out ahead of her, and I'm going to try to engage that tier 5 Japanese ARP ship. It's no different than a Congo, you just had to do the missions to unlock it. And if you don't like seeing the neon colors driving around your historic game, all you have to do is not drive the Yokosuka port. If that is not the port you have set, you will not see them in the game. It'll just list as a normal Congo. So I like what Wargaming did there. So I come out from this edge of land, ready to fire at that ARP. They're basically driving stationary. I'm trying to figure out where to shoot, and you see I end up just doing a volley where I drag my cursor along them to try to spread the rounds out over the hull and hopefully hit a citadel, not knowing what they're doing with their engines. Only connected for 7,000 damage, but at this point, only 2 caps. I'm going for C. We need to cap it, and I want to put pressure on this Kirishima. I can easily outduel it, particularly that they've decided to sit still. And at first I thought maybe they're AFK or they disconnected, but when you disconnect, the turrets will actually go back to fore and aft, and you can see they're still firing. So I think honestly, poor decision on their part to sit like that against a New Mexico and Warspite, and they got a little lucky. I never managed to connect a citadel. And something got massive hits into her there, which means in a couple seconds when I have this volley, they should be erased. I only fired 2 of my turrets at her. I don't want to waste ammo. Finish off my first ship. 33,000 damage in. We've capped C. And our team's actually doing fairly well. I swing my bow to port to get my 2 rear turrets over to try to finish off this Qckslvrslash. And despite looking like that one shell hit, they missed. A friendly finishes them off. And I turn to now go for B. They've got 1 DD left. We know it's way over at A. And you can't allow them to just have an uncontested cap. And I really don't like what my teammates are doing here. They're all focusing in on this one cruiser up here. It's dead now, and our New Mexico turned up to go chase it. That's, with that 18.5 knot top speed, is going to put him out of position. One of the big things you have to focus on in the Warspite is not getting dragged off to the kind of corners of the map, particularly when there's a lot of vessels. If there's one ship left and you're chasing them, by all means, go to the corner. But if you get pulled too far away from the capture points, the low speed of this and the American battleships, it can completely remove you from the game. So that's why when I went into C, I went in, I stayed on the close side, and I'm going to do this the whole game. I'm going to try to stick to kind of this oblonged circle that would connect all the caps. That's where I want to be, I want to work. I'm going to put the armor to good use and just tank and try to put out as much damage as possible. One of the Warspite's actual kind of good uses is playing, that role of the tank. Let things focus in on you, And as long as you've got cruisers with you to put out damage, you're going to have a solid game, and you're going to allow your team to be effective, because rather than, the enemy battleships shooting at the Cleveland or Königsberg, Nuremberg, whatever cruiser is with you, when they start shooting at you, you're kind of effectively amplifying the firepower of your team by keeping them in the game longer. And that's the kind of mentality I play a lot of my battleships with, is I want to get in there. I avoid destroyers. I'm not going to drive into a torpedo screen. But I want to get my ship into the mix, get a little brawly, and really draw focus in onto me so that my team can just have free reign at shooting whatever they want without too much worry of, getting picked apart by the enemy team. It's why I love this ship. I love the Tirpitz. I'm hoping the rest of the German line is a lot like that too, that kind of brawly cruiser hunter. And I suspect they will be with what I've seen. But this video is not about the German line, it is about the Warspite. And I'm closing in on really the two other options at tier 6. The Arizona is another one, but the Arizona is essentially a New Mexico, all intents and purposes, with some mild stat bonuses and negatives as far as her balance goes. So first off, I want to focus down this Fuso. I find the Fuso, with those 6 turrets, can be a lot more effective than a New Mexico, and I'm going to reliably penetrate the Fuso. The New Mexico is a lot like the Warspite in that she can be very hard to penetrate, but if you start focusing on the superstructure and just putting damage into the hull, you're going to consistently do damage to them, but you're never going to get those big hits, whereas against a Fuso, I know I can get the Citadel. And you see, I'm firing at her even though she's nose on. I was actually aiming for her turrets. I want to try to knock out some of that superior firepower. And I eat a big shell from her there, and my secondaries continue to buzz away, and you can see how she's focusing in on me, and it's allowing Envy Mountain Dew from behind me to put in supporting fire. And just look at all those fires that I got. I got 2 fires on her as I worked her down, and another 30,000 damage. And sorry about that, it seems my guinea pigs are hungry for food. So having eliminated the Fuso, next on my hit list is this full health New Mexico who's sitting still. Where you see where their aircraft carrier ends up at the end of the game, I kind of wonder if he just decided I'm going to play protection for the aircraft carrier. I'm going to park in front of him and try to stop anything from getting to him and keep the CV in the game as long as possible, which honestly not a bad idea to protect him, but to sit still to do so I think is a big misplay. So you can see I took another big hit from that New Mexico there about 20 seconds ago, and luckily next repair party cooldown's almost ready, and it's going to take me back above 50% health. One of the important things I find with the Warspite is run your Dreadnought flags. You run the Dreadnought flags, you're going to be more likely to earn more Dreadnought flags, and it's kind of this like self-fulfilling circle. I've got almost 500 of them now, just from running battleships with them, because they allow you to heal more of the damage you've taken. So I had been wanting to turn broadside on to unleash a full volley the second this New Mexico poked out from the edge of land. Envy put some torps past me. I still managed to put a solid hit into him. And I've got to worry about these torpedo bombers. So I put the rudder hard over, and just look how quickly this ship turns. That's really her biggest protection from AA. It's not that she's got amazing anti-air cover, but you can turn so quickly that you can just dodge. You see the second torpedo squadron coming in. They hear you going for that traditional cross attack, although offset. Normally you would want to put them all in at the exact same time. But great rudder response and turning, I dodged the second set as well. And some good mastery of WASD. Basically, aircraft carriers aren't going to hit you. The downside, though, is enemy aircraft carriers can force you to go to side on to enemy battleships, and then you'll eat massive damage. So with a bit of help from my division mate, I've successfully killed all the competition I have at equal tier. In my mind, proving this is the best battleship tier for tier. But I've done 111,000 damage and the game's not over. I'm about to milk a few thousand more out of this Hiryu as he sends yet another torpedo squadron my way. But once again, it's really no big deal. I easily turn and dodge these torpedoes. Granted, his bombers do hit me. And it's right here I kind of have to just let a fire burn until I'm confident I've dodged the final set of torpedoes. At which point, activate that, activate my repair party, and I'm almost going to be back up to half health all said and told. So the situation I just put the Warspite in, where I drove straight at two equal tier battleships, is where I feel she's best. When you can get your nose in, you're not going to take those big hits. The only big hits I did take were when I wasn't angled and, you know, I swung my stern a little too far to get those rear turrets firing, mistiming that. That's when I got hit. When I focused on keeping, 20-degree angle, the Fuso was just sliding shells down the side of my hull doing no damage. And I was able to consistently return fire and still, get 2,000-3,000 damage onto her with each shell when she was nose on, and the second I got the side, I was able to put bigger damage on. So I'm kind of hanging out near these aircraft, putting supporting fire in at that enemy New Mexico. One of my missions was to get 8 airplane kills in a game, and despite them being higher tier aircraft and relatively poor AA, I managed to do that, and I just got high caliber with that volley into the New Mexico at 130,000 damage already. And that's what the Warspite does. Game in, game out, I get consistent good games out of her because I put her in those brawly situations where I'd say my superior skill in a lot of cases, and I do get outplayed sometimes, but quite often enemy battleships give me their sides, I can put massive volleys in and walk away with big damage and high kill counts. So at this point the game is pretty much over. 49 shells, only 2 citadels, but I managed 131,000 damage. 53 secondary hits, which put in 3 fires, and those fires helped me against that Fuso. She let them burn, and it just ticked up damage. I got high caliber and Confederate. If I had a chance at catching that Atlanta and the time, I probably would have gotten Kraken as well. But I hope this game kind of highlighted, in conjunction with the other one I put up of the Warspite, just how devastating these 381mm guns can be. And after that incredibly slow start, I ended up making 500,000 credits and 12,527 experience. I got high caliber and Confederate, did 131,000 damage, 4 kills, 2 sits, and just a really fun game. No surprise, top of the team, just shy of 2,400 base experience. And look at some of those damage totals. Like 29,000 to the Fuso, 29,000 to the Hiryu. Just really spread out damage on everything except that Błyskawica. And all told, I walked away with just shy of 460,000. As I said, 12,500 experience and 16,000 for that British commander that is still waiting for a Royal Navy line to be in the game. I hope you had fun watching this extra video. And as always, I'm Qckslvrslash. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe, both really help me out and keep me interested in making these videos. Have a good day.